we started with back 21 years ago, and it's now built up over the years where at home we have a collection of over 3,000 pieces of different glassware. This is probably still our first love and probably always will be. In the theme of things tonight, I'll give you, first of all, the history of Carnival Glass, how it was made. Then Margaret will assist me with, I've bought some overheads because I thought, seeing it's a history trust, I can show you some of the history that I have in old leaflets to do with glassware and that I've collected over the years, and a lot of them have Carnival Glass items in them, so we'll share some of those with you. Then I'll talk to you about some of the colours that I have on the table, and then we'll have some questions, and we'll need all of that because it'll take you an hour to get out tonight with all the parking, but you'll be okay. And then hopefully we'll finish off, well we will, with some glassware here that your members have brought along tonight. And we have some interesting pieces there already, and even some pieces that aren't Carnival, but we'll still talk about those. So I'll get started and tell you that around 1900, the only type of iridized glassware, and to be Carnival Glass it must have this oil on water effect, for want of better words, that was available, was glassware produced by companies known as Tiffany and Steuben. And of course this glassware, certainly this glassware, was very, very expensive, and the ordinary housewife could not afford it. So a member of the Fenton glassware family who resided in America, and they were taught the glass-making trade in England, decided that they would bring out as part of their range of glassware some items that were iridized. So in 1905 they produced their first pieces, and they used 10 different patterns to do these with. The American housewives took to it with a fervour, and the glassware was eagerly sought after, and Fenton couldn't keep up enough production. 4 other companies in the next 6 years saw that Fenton were doing very well. So this took us up to 1911, and in those ensuing 4, 5, 6 years, the firms of Imperial, Millersburg, Dugan and Northwood came onto the scene and decided to make iridized glassware as well. Now when this glassware was made from 1905, it was known as Aurora glass, taffeta glass and Parisian art. The name Carnival comes in later into the history, and I'll get to that as the years go through. We're now up to 1911, 1912, and this glassware, the American housewives just took to it. Well, by the time 1914 came, it was then imported into the United Kingdom and into Australia. We're now towards 1915, 1916, and the Australian housewives were the same as the American housewives, and so were the English housewives. They took to this glass and they just couldn't get enough of it. By this stage, the 5, 6 major American companies were now producing over 1,000 patterns, and in some cases over 30 different colours. So the ranges and amount of Carnival Glass to collect is never ending. In 1919, the Crown Crystal Glass Company, or as they were known then, the Crystal Glass Company, decided that they were making Australia's domestic glassware at that time, and they could see where Carnival Glass was a real popular thing. Excuse me a moment. Was a real popular thing. So the glassware that had come into this country was ordered from America, but was ordered through English agents. So we had to go from Australia to England to get it from America to be brought out here. So Crown Crystal were very cunning and took the English agents to court so that they could buy direct from America. But they were very, very cunning, and while the court case ensued, which was for the next 4 years from 1919, they then brought out a range of Carnival Glass, which included Australian fauna and flora emblems. And I have some here tonight which we'll go through later, but they included emus and magpies, kangaroos, kookaburras, the whole works. And then they did items that contained flannel flowers, butterfly bells, waratahs, the whole range. The Australian glassware started in 1919 and carried through till the 30s. Then in the mid-20s, the Sowerby Glass Company of England, who had produced glassware since the 1800s, decided to resurrect moulds from around 1880, and they made and produced their Carnival Glass in these moulds. The English housewives took to the English product, and the one thing that was quite different from the American product that we could find in over 30 different colours was that the Australian and the English Carnival Glass was only produced in what we call marigold, which is this colour, the orange colour, and a deep dark amethyst-based glass like this. And then very rarely, in England and in Australia, we produced a glass that had a rare aqua base to it. These pieces are very hard to find. That isn't an early piece, but the colour is exactly the same. So we're now up towards the late 20s into the 30s, and then firms in Europe, in Czechoslovakia, Finland, Germany, decided to produce Carnival glass as well, and we're into the 30s, and in the mid-30s there was even a company in Firazabad in India that was doing glassware that was much, much different, because their glassware was produced in wooden moulds compared with the English, American and Australian that was done in cast iron moulds. It takes us up now towards the end of the 30s. Around this time, unfortunately, there then tended to be a glut of Carnival glass. The American housewives were starting to get a bit sick of everything that was coming out. The Australian the prime period was falling off, as was with England. And of course, the American companies and some of the Australian companies were left with a lot of Carnival glass. So, remembering, of course, then, I'm referring to it as Carnival, but it still never had that name. And then all of this glut of Carnival that was left over was then passed off to fetes and fairs and stalls and carnivals, and was used for hoopla stands and for rolling balls down. They were prizes. That name, Carnival glass, is the name that it then became known as, and it is the name that has stuck with it today. Not perhaps as attractive as Aurora glass, taffeta glass and Parisian art, but it's the name we know, and we must stick with that name. We now go into like the late 30s into the 40s, and of course Carnival glass then wasn't heard much of. And that went then into the 50s, and there still wasn't much happening with Carnival glass. And in the late 50s, the American housewives decided to take to it as a collectible. This spread, and now we have every state of America that has at least one club for collecting of Carnival glass. Some have 2 and 3. It started here in the 70s in Australia, where clubs sprung up. Now there are 3 in Australia, of which my wife and I belong to the South Australian section of that club. There's one in New South Wales and one in Victoria. England has one Carnival Glass Society, and from this period then we're into like the 60s, and some of the manufacturers who were still going at that time, which was Fenton and Imperial, the other companies had fallen by the wayside over the years, they decided that it might be a good idea, because it was gaining in popularity again, that they should produce Carnival glass. So they resurrected some of their Carnival glass moulds from 1905 through to 1930. They only used a small proportion of those moulds, and for a 2 or 3 year period they produced them in the old moulds without marking them in any way, with any identification. So this meant that those who are collecting now find it hard for that 2 or 3 year period to work out whether some pieces are old or whether they're new. But when you become an experienced collector, you can straight away tell to do with the iridescence on them, which we go into with the manufacture of them. We then come into the 60s and 70s, and 2 or 3 companies brought out glassware. One was the Indiana Glass Company of Dunkirk, Indiana, and they brought out a piece of glass that looks like this, and there were about 30 or 40 items, and they were only made in a green and a marigold and a blue, and then very, very rarely for 3 or 4 items in a red, like this is. That glassware is not eagerly sought after today. And we then come through to the 80s, 90s period, and in the 90s period the Imperial Glass Company dropped out, and it left them with one company, which was Fenton, who still produce Carnival today, and they're the only one of the old companies who produce Carnival today, and of course they were the company who first produced it. Now there are another 6 or 7 small companies who produce novelties, like the little hand bars, a throw over from Victorian times, and little items like cars, and they do lots of animals and miniature punch sets and so forth. So that brings us up to today and tells us that Carnival Glass has nearly had a 100-year history, and one company will be there at the end of that 100-year history in 2 years. That gives you an idea of the history of it from 1905 up to date. The manufacture of it. All of the Carnival glass, bar about 2%, is produced in cast iron moulds. The cast iron moulds are the best. Cast iron is the best material to do this, to produce glassware in. It keeps the pattern well, the cut of the pattern, the mould, and it's used in all the factories all over the world that are producing Carnival glass, except for India, who were using wooden moulds. Now, you've all probably seen where glassware, molten glassware, is tipped into a mould and forced out into the mould to produce the pattern. I think the real craftsmen of those days were the mould makers, because you realise that with a lot of the pattern had to be cut in reverse, because they had to force the glass into the pattern, so it had to be cut in reverse. Now, Carnival glass, to give you an idea, is produced in these moulds. Only a couple of % of it is blown, and that's normally the stoppers on wine decanters and items like that. But when we have a piece of glass, Carnival glass must be moulded, and then it must be iridised, which I said is that oil on water effect. Now, when this particular piece comes out of the mould, it's a piece of just clear flint glass, like that, right? While it's still warm, after it's come out of the mould, and while it's still warm, they spray it with a mixture of metallic salts. Now, I'm not a chemist, and what is in these mixtures is just different metallic salts that give different colours. So this was clear glass, and you can see around the bottom here, the rim is clear glass. I don't know whether you can all see that, but you can have a look afterwards. While it's still warm, they spray it with the mixture of metallic salts. That gives it the iridescent. So whether that be that colour, which is marigold, or something we have here, which is green, when that come out of the mould, it's a piece of green glass sprayed with metallic salts, and that one has a bronze or silver effect to it. Even if we were to look at this one, comes out of the mould as that green colour there, and then is sprayed with this lovely bronze iridescent, which makes you think in some cases it could be almost like an ambery bronze colour, but in actual fact it's a green. So always remember that with Carnival glass, it's sprayed after it comes out of the mould. So if I say to you I have a piece here like this one that's purple, it's then sprayed afterwards to give it with iridescence, with metallic salts to give it that iridescent effect. Now vases were an interest, and of course what we must remember is that in 1905 through there was no such thing as the Department of Occupational Health, Safety and Welfare. Contained in with the mixture of metallic salts is arsenic that was used as one of the sprays. So the gentlemen who were spraying the iridescence onto, the metallic salts onto these pieces, a lot of those gentlemen never lived past 40. Because they were, of course, breathing in all of these fumes. If you go into a modern factory today that produces Carnival glass, of course it's an enclosed room, the men wear suits, they wear breathing apparatus, and there's extraction fans everywhere. That is why the iridescence process changes, and the iridescence from modern pieces does look a bit more gaudy, for want of a better word, than some of the early pieces. And it's because the iridescence changed and the formulas changed for doing the iridescence, mainly to take out all of the dangerous elements. Now, and in glass factories, the big thing was, excuse me a moment, I'm talking too much, was that they were great things for family operations, and sons followed fathers and grandfathers into the glass works. They started off with just sweeping the glass floors and then worked up to become the gaffer of the plant. And he was the man who was in charge of the whole glass gang and did all of the final finishing on glass. Now, vases are the extraordinary thing in that, when the factory got their orders in, and when I refer later on to some of these as a pattern, in the factory they were simply known by their numbers, a 52 or a 53, whatever. All of the names I give Carnival glass, and when we get to your members' items, are names that were given by these collectors from the late 50s, 60s, 70s, right up till today. This particular vase here, both of these came out of exactly the same mould. If I put the bases together, you can see that they're exactly the same. It's the same star in the base. This one, apart from where it's flared at the top, would have come out dead straight up and down, came out of the mould, was sprayed. Now the pattern, it has little beads around here. I don't know whether you can make those out yet, but you can have a look at those after. And large ball type eyes here. Now the collectors of the late 50s, 60s called that beaded bullseye, which it does resemble that type of thing. They are both exactly the same pattern. This one has, the only work this has had done once it came out the mould after it was sprayed was it went to the gaffer and he used his wooden tool as he spun it and just flared that out so it had a nice flared top. This one, in every glass factory would have about a 6-foot deep pit like they would have in an automotive workshop, or would have a stand about 6 foot high with stairs coming up. They would stand there, and while this glass was still pliable, before it was iridised, they would swing them. And by swinging them, just the force, of course, stretches your vase. And then the factory would have orders for so many at 8 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches. So this is the one after it's been stretched. And as you can see, we have no definition of the bullseyes at the bottom. We have a little bit of the ribbing here as it comes up, but of course we have the bullseyes at the top. So the pieces that came out of the mould with just a bit of flaring, and then this is the one after it's been swung. And all vases in the glass factories were swung to get the height. This particular one is the third, like we have, that's the standard size. There's one in between these two, and one larger, all from the one mould. So that was the skill of the tradesman there as well. Now, when we talk about, oh, I haven't done something, have I?
Oh, no.
I've got to pass these around. You must look at these while I'm talking. I'll have one. You just pass those back. Sorry, but I was supposed to give those to you 10 minutes or so ago. If you could look at those, when you get to the glass item, that's the mystery item for later I'll ask you about at the end of the talk. Now, that's how Carnival Glass is made. Of course, it has a lot of stresses and strains on it when it comes out of the mould, but these are taken out. It's passed through a number of ovens and the stresses and strains are taken out of it. But remember, clear glass, while it's still warm, sprayed with metallic salts, which give it that iridescent effect. Now, the thing is, you'll notice when you look here that we have items that are heavily iridised and some that are not so heavy. This was a mass-produced glass for the masses. They had to get as much production out as they could, and they had to produce it as cheaply as they could. So therefore, sometimes it would get 2 or 3 sprays, sometimes it might only get 1 or 2 or just 1. So we find some pieces that are quite light in colours and some that are quite deep. Just to give you an example, when I was talking about the clear, here's the same pattern here, which is thin ribbon drape, the pattern is called, both out of exactly the same mould. There's the clear item, or flint item, before it was sprayed with Marigold Carnival, exactly the same piece of glass, so that's all they did. Now I'll leave that and we'll go into some of the overheads to show you just something about Carnival Glass. I'll come up to the side. Could we have the lights dim, please, sir? Thank you. I'll just get away. I found this catalogue. Do any of you remember W.H. Bruce? Yes. They were in Grove Street, was their main store. In the catalogue, which is from 1924, you don't remember that one? No. They have this, among all the items that W.H. Bruce sold, there are 3 pictures, 3 pages coming up, and these are items, all of these items come from Imperial, which was one of those companies from, not the first one in 1905, but from 1908 onwards. And at the top we have the complete water set, which is 7 and 6, right, in 1920 odd. Now that water set is up around $500 to buy. If we, I'm better over here, aren't I? If we came to this set, sorry? Yes, thank you, Margaret. That little set there is a sugar and a creamer, which was just part of what they called a breakfast set. It's in a pattern that's been called Fashion, and it says there that you could get the pair for 1 and 6 or a shilling for 1. If you found that set now in Marigold, because it says pretty amber colouring, but it's in actual fact Marigold, the colour of the tall vases, they go for, these days, probably $300 to $400 for the pair. The items on the bottom, I have one in green. You see that particular, that's the one over to the left. That's it in green. That would have been in Marigold. In Marigold, they're about $150 these days. Can we have the next one, please, Margaret? And you remember their catalogues. You just ordered out of the catalogue whatever you wanted that was sent to you. Now, again, we have the item there, which is the top and the bottom, which was a fruit bowl. It's a 2-piece item. Some people refer to them as punch sets, but in Fashion, you wouldn't get a lot of punch in that particular one because it's not a deep one. 8 and 6 now is about $600 to $700 because of the size and what it was. The 3 items across the bottom, which are just small little compotes. The one on the right is Star Medallion, the one in the centre is Imperial Grape, and the one on the right here, sorry, is Scroll Embossed. Now, they're all Imperial again, and the 3 of those would go for around $120, $140. If they were in Imperial's purple colour, then we double the price. That's only for the standard Marigold. This is the 3rd one from the W.H. Bruce catalogue. All the items at the top that you can see there, and all of these sold were Marigold, even though they call them amber. Of all those items there, the decanter and the 6 glasses at the bottom, in Marigold these days would be $300 to $500, in purple would be $1,000. So you can see that an item that cost you, and there it is, I didn't realise that. The dark purple one was 7 and 6 a set, which is now $1,000 to buy. Because being an item of 7 or 8 pieces with that stopper, these items were broken over the years. I have a punch glass there to show you afterwards from the set we have at home. Thank you, Margaret. Now the next one. Now, this one is from a very old catalogue I have of Foy and Gibson, who were out of Melbourne. The items, if you could point to them, Margaret, the vase, that vase there and the one next to it, and the vase right down at the bottom, the bowl down at the bottom, those three items are Carnival Glass. So Foy and Gibson were into selling our Carnival Glass as well. Thank you, Margaret. It's part of a number of catalogues we have in our collection. This is self-explanatory in that it's a Bushell's tea catalogue of 1929, and you just simply bought your packets of tea which had the coupons on them. Would people still remember those with the coupons? Yep. I don't want to know your age, right? And of course, you could send in, for instance, for this comport, the second one down on the right, 36 £1 or 72 half-pound labels got you that comport. Now, of those items there on that page, the two vases at the top and the bowl underneath are all made by Fenton, that first company who produced Carnival. All of the other items were produced in Sydney by, firstly, Crystal Glass Company, and then when they amalgamated in 1926 to become Crown Crystal, then that carried on. The large item here with the float bowl, that one, you could get those quite cheaply. Now, these days, those items are normally never under $2,000. And that's just an Australian product from the 20s. It's a very rare thing to collect. There are complete sets there, like above the cake stand, is that one that has the swans in it. So, thank you, Margaret. You can all still hear me? Yes, good. And here we have, could we go over, just over to, that's it. Now, all of this here, it says tinted glassware. Now, this comes out of a Bushell's catalogue from 1921. I have about 10 Bushell's catalogues, and 1916 is the earliest one, and I go up to the 50s. But all of those items you can see there, all of them, one of them is that shape, that leg. You see how we have this leg here? You see how the top has that leg? So that's from the same sort of style on that bowl that one of your members has brought along. But all of those pieces there are items produced by Fenton. Now, that was that company from 1905 who first started to produce. We tend to find in this country more Fenton items than any others, and that's just a full range, including the complete sweet set there that was simply called Butterfly and Berry, and you can probably make out the butterfly and then the alternating pattern of the berry. All of those are Fenton items, and that's from 1921. Here we have a page from a 1928 Crown Crystal catalogue. Now, in Crown Crystal's terms, their iridescent ware was their Marigold Carnival, and their deluster ware was their dark Carnival glass. I don't know whether you can make it out, but in the centre of here, because it's not very clear.
There we go. I just put it up so to get in focus.
Right, is a flannel flower. Can you see that right in the centre? I don't understand the technicalities, you see, I only do the talking. And you'll notice over on the bowl there, you can just make out a kookaburra in the centre. Can you just see the kookaburra being made out just in the centre there? So there's a kookaburra in that one. So all made in Australia are part of that range. And of course, Crown Crystal, that's another story itself, their history of Australian glass from the 20s to the 40s. Next one, please. Now, the good thing about Carnival Glass is, unlike a lot of other glasses, that it is well documented, and we still have a lot of surviving items in catalogues from the American firms, not so much with the Australian or the English. Now, these little pages here, these little pictures here of glass are from old Butler Brothers catalogue, and Butler Brothers were just a warehouse wholesale firm that just sold off glass, and you can see that at the top, any of those items there you could buy for 65 American cents each. Now, Margaret's pointing to the bowl right at the top, which is called a banana bowl. If you could find one of those now, you'd be paying between $500 and $700 in purple. Now, I mean, it's not bad for an item that sold for 65 cents that isn't 100 years old. We come down to the bottom to this dressing table set. 75 cents, and in there's probably 7 or 8 items. There's a perfume bottle, a cologne bottle, a covered hair receiver, dresser tray, a little pin tray, and a hat pin holder. Now the hat pin holder is the rarest item out of that set, and you could buy the whole set for 75 cents, and just the hat pin holders now are $1,000 plus, if you can find them. Next one please, Margaret. I'm using these so you can get an idea, but we mustn't be taken in by that, because Carnival Glass that we bought 20 years ago is still the same price now. A lot of it is much dearer. Now, we have here 3 groups. 2 are from 1920 and 1 is from 1910. The bottom one is the 1910 one, and we have items there. And when we look at Carnival Glass, most Carnival Glass contained flowers, berries, grapes, or animal motifs, which most of those do. Again, it's all Fenton glassware, and you can see why I bought it. See, it says New Venetian Art Assortment, which was one of those early names that they used. Thank you, Margaret. We want to look at the bottom set, which was the largest thing that was made in Carnival Glass. The top part of that, this part here, these two are separate. They came with 6, 8, 12 or 24 cups. The large part there, you can see a baby in the top of that one. $4.25 for the set, and they're probably $2,500 if you could find one. So they're an item that's gone up as well. Thank you, Margaret. Here's a page from a 1914 Imperial Glass catalogue, of which we have a copy of. We have 4 patterns. The top one there is called Tiger Lily. We have Windmill, which is self-explanatory. Under that is 474, and then we have Robin. They were available, most of those were available in 5 to 6 different colours. Water sets these days are generally $400 upwards, depending on colour and pattern and how many were made. Next one, thanks. We must be getting near the end, I would think.
Yep. This is the last one.
Now this one I brought you along to show you a rough idea of what the Northwood factory looked like in 1906. As you can see, it was not a clean establishment. There was lots going on, and there was spraying in one corner and trying to produce glass in another and blowing and what have you. So they were rough old places. These days, of course, they have to be much better done these days. Now down the bottom of the photo, we have the ladies in the factory who would decorate the glassware and wrap the glassware ready to go out to their different agencies. Thank you for that, Mark. Is that all of those? Thank you. No, one more. And the last one is to show you that in Australia, when we produced our glassware, you'll find that if you ever find any Australian glassware, there's 3 pieces of Australian glassware that contains design registration numbers on them. One of those happens to be a kingfisher, which was the first piece that Crystal Glassware made. The next one was a kangaroo, and the other one was a swan, because in the days when these pieces were registered, you went along to the particular office to register your particular design, which you can see there, and it gets a number and what have you. And then, in those early days when the first 3 had numbers on them, the piece had to carry the number. After they did the 3rd one, which was the swan, the law was changed and the pieces no longer had to carry their registration number. So for those of you who see Australian Carnival Glass and think it has a number, it doesn't mean that it's any rarer than other Australian glass. It was just the particular government law at the time. Thank you, Margaret. Could we have the lights again, please, sir? Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to go through now and give you an idea of some of the glassware here and to do with the colours. Now, when I bring along glassware from our collection, I can only bring you smaller items because, you know, the size of packing and so forth. So the rarest colour is red of Carnival Glass and tends to be one of the rarer colours. There's probably one more, which is aqua opalescent. But this is a modern red colour, but the old red wasn't unlike it. And I never bring that out because we only have one piece in the entire collection. And so red's one of the hardest, with a colour called aqua opalescent. Now, opalescent we mean that has that white milk type edge or opalescent edge. Now, this was produced in the glass factory when they were making up and getting all the items out ready to make molten glass, and they were pouring in the silica, which is the sand, and all the other elements and so forth. If they added to that mixture bone ash, potash or soda ash, they could produce opalescent glass in pressed glassware or any glassware. If they didn't use the bone ash, potash or soda ash, it would never happen. It would never turn this lovely opalescent edge. And all it simply meant was that it would come out of the mould as the piece of glassware, coloured glassware. They would then reapply it to the heat source, and they would hold it to that heat source or have a heat source over it. If it has the bone ash, potash or soda ash, it will then start to turn milk opalescent or white on the edges. Depending on how long they leave it there, depends of course on how much of that opalescent edge you get. In our collection at home, we have items that only have that opalescent edge just to the edge of a piece. We have it where they come down on the piece halfway, or the whole piece is covered in the opalescent. I'll give you an idea, and with this piece, you can see it comes about halfway down the piece. That's just been left that long. The opalescent got to there, turned to there, and then was taken away from the heat source. It doesn't matter, you can leave it there all day, and all the thing will eventually do is melt away back into molten glass. Unless it's got soda, bone ash or potash, that will never happen. The paintwork that's inside this piece was a thing that happened in the 30s when Carnival Glass was waning, and they had to think of other selling gimmicks for it, so they decided to start painting some of their items. And this is one of those. A lot of early collectors tried to scrape this out thinking that it wasn't part of it, but of course it's shown in catalogues that show from the 1930s and show some pieces painted, so we know it's original. The other unusual part is that if while they were mixing the glass they used uranium oxide, it has a strange reaction to a UV or ultraviolet light. And to all intentional purposes this just looks like a piece of marigold carnival glass, but if I turn on the UV or black light, we get this amazing, can you all see that? And that's produced because this has the uranium oxide in the original glass mix. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. It turns it like that. So, thank you. And we have members in our club who collect this. In our carnival terms, this is known as Vaseline carnival. The opal one I showed you before was aqua opal. This one that has the marigold colour is called peach opalescence. That one with the paintwork. This is referred to as Vaseline carnival, and some of our members have cabinets set up with the black lights and all pieces that will glow. We have something over here that will glow from your members' things afterwards, so I'll show you that again. After we go from the opalescent, the red colours, we then go into what are called the pastel colours, and these colours tend to surprise most people as being carnival glass. They don't realise they are. This is pastel blue, pastel green, or ice blue and ice green. These are the pieces these days. For some reason, the Americans with their export trade ship to Australia, and predominantly Adelaide, their pastel colours, and especially the patterns they now want back. Regularly, these items go on auction sites for thousands of dollars, but not all ice blue and ice green is worth money. We have ice blue and ice green colours that only go for $300 and $400, but certain patterns will go for $5,000 to $10,000 in these particular colours. Along with the ice blue and the ice green is the white, which probably puzzles most people. Again, it carries the grapes, as this one carried flowers and this one carried fruit. It's a pattern called Palm Beach. We have it at home. This is just the glass, and there's another 5 glasses and the jug at home. It is in white carnival, made in the USA. Then from there, we go to the deep purples in a mug with a pattern called Dandelion, made by Northwood and branded inside with the N. Because of those early companies, there were only 2 companies who marked their glass. One was Northwood, who marked their glass with a circle with an N in it, but not on every piece. And up till 1914, the Imperial Glass Company of America marked their pieces with a German iron cross, and in each of the 4 sections they would have IMPERIAL. When the war came, Imperial dropped that tag. Their glass is not worth anymore because it has that tag. It's just a mark that they had. All the modern glassware from sort of late 60s, 70s onwards does contain some form of maker's mark, even if it's only a sticker. We go through. We have greens of various sizes. This is a green from Northwood, that's a green from Imperial. They're different greens. Most collections you see will contain bowls. There won't be too many plates in a collection. And to give you an example, if this particular piece has stippling in amongst the fruit here, if this piece here was a bowl, it would probably be worth $300 to $400. As a plate, it's $2,000, only because of the colour and the pattern. From greens, there's another green, and down the front we have even again another green. A beautiful iridescence to this one. I would have liked to have seen the punch set to it. Blues can be quite brilliant. This is probably what most people know as iridescence on Carnival Glass, this heavy blue. Again, what we must look at is, when I said to you that Carnival Glass was so cheaply made, what they did was, when they iridised the piece, you see, that's the colour it came out of the mould. That's after it's sprayed. They didn't worry about the back because that wasn't the part you saw. You mainly saw the inside of the piece, or if it was on the wall or in a stand, you never saw the back. Cheaply made, had to get as much production as they could, so they would only spray, in most cases, the surface that you saw. Then we go to items like baskets. This is the smallest basket that they made, and then they went up to 12 inches in height with about 3 or 4 in between. There's the lovely wine glass to suit the decanter we saw on the screen. We have the other 5 glasses and the decanter at home. Here we have an item from England. It's marked British made on the bottom. It's in a colour that's called smoke, and it's just a little fruit compote. Out of Czechoslovakia and Poland came these items that were in a process in glass making called intaglio, where the pattern is pushed into the base of a piece, and then they would just iridise that section. Has its sticker and was made in Poland or Czechoslovakia, both countries did them, 30s, 40s. We have this particular dish in green that has a pansy in the centre that's known as a pickle dish, has a quilted back to it and the pansy pattern on the inside. Vases came in various heights. This is perhaps the smallest one we have. That one looks smaller, but it's actually not. And we have them up to 23 inches at home, and the larger vases were referred to as funeral vases. Candlesticks were made of all shapes and sizes. This one has the extra decoration of grapes. When we look at the entire collection, we come to this one, which is the odd one out. You'll notice that when we look at Carnival Glass, it has quite a thick section to it. This one's rather thin. It fits in with any Carnival Glass collection because of the colour, but in actual fact it's one of that rare thing that's actually not Carnival Glass. All of this is referred to as iridescent ware. This is called fluorescent ware. Was produced by a firm called Stevens and Williams, who through a number of amalgamations went on to become Royal Brearley Crystal, who are up in that Dudley, Kings, Winford area of England, which was all the glass making area. These were mainly made as inserts for epergnes. And then a lot of them were shaped, and when they were used in conjunction with the Carnival Glass ones that were iridised, they used this technique where it was called Jack in the Pulpit shape. That particular shape is called Jack in the Pulpit, and a lot of these are found in various stands of 1s, 2s, 3s, and we've got one at home that has 7. They're a lovely item, not Carnival, but fit in with a Carnival Glass collection. We come down and I have 4 items here from modern Carnival. This is from the 70s, this goblet from Indiana. This item here is from 1997, made by Fenton, iridised as modern Carnival. It's an old pattern. It's called Peacock and Dahlia with the rose on the back, but it was made for the club I belong to in England as their souvenir for 1997. Here we have the hand vase, which was made by Fenton only 2 years ago. And then we come to a range that consists of some of the Australian. And when you came to the Australian glass, this one has the number in it, which is 4697, which was its registration number. You could get these with magpies, as I said, emus, kiwis, the swan, kookaburras, kingfishers. That's about all. And they came either as the large master bowl, as we call it, or you could get the small nappy bowl, or you could purchase the 2 together as a set. I've brought you along tonight the small one in the dark colour and the large one in the marigold, just to give you an idea. This one has the magpie in it. And the added thing that we have is that the South Australians were great ones for our Adelaide exhibitions and royal shows to collect glassware from those shows and have their personal greetings put on it. Amongst our collection, we probably have, I think, 400 to 500 items that are etched from Adelaide exhibitions and royal shows, and this particular one just simply is etched Adelaide Exhibition 1925 to Bobby from Auntie Ella. And we have other Carnival Glass at home that is like that as well. I'll put that down. So the exhibition things are a great thing, and no matter what glassware we go to look at, we find so many items that are etched from Adelaide exhibitions and royal shows. In with this Australian glass, remember that we only have the 2 colours, marigold and dark, and very, very rarely We find some Australian with a rare aqua base glass to it, but they are so very rare. The other odd little thing I brought along to show you was this simple little banana split dish or nut sundae dish. There are countless numbers of these about in all different colours. If you find an iridised version, which were just a few shillings for a dozen of them, these are now $300 to $400 in marigold, which this marigold colour is. Rare little survivors, don't turn up very often, so hang on to one if you see it. Now, the other last item on here I think I have to show you is this item. Vases were made in all shapes and sizes, and because they had to get as many gimmicks out of them, they couldn't produce as many. This is a pattern called woodpecker, and has a hole in the back, and it was simply just a wall vase. And it went flat onto the wall onto a hook, a nail, a screw, whatever, had some water in there with just a couple of stems in it just to show you. So they made everything you could imagine. Now that brings us to the end of this part, the overheads. Now, have those pieces gone right around, seeing I started late? The necklace. Now, when you look at those, the necklaces and the buttons that went round on the card, all of the necklaces and buttons were produced in Europe, mainly out of Czechoslovakia. They were produced nowhere else in the old items. Modern Carnival Glass jewellery is on the market now and traditionally comes out of areas like Poland and places like this, but the old all came out of Czechoslovakia. The old buttons always have metal shanks, never the plasticky type ones, which are the modern ones. And that beaded work went right through, and we have a piece on the table. And also you see items that were done were like clothing, where there were ladies' beaded dresses were done, cardigans, it's done onto the back, and even down here onto the arms. So the beads were a great thing, a very great thing. Now, has everyone seen the glass item? Yes. Now, does anybody, maybe if you've been to my talk before you would know what it is. If you do, don't say. Can you guess what it might be? I'll tell you what I've had. I've had that it could be for darning socks. I've had that it could be a candle snuffer. Then I recently had that it was an insert for a perm. Does anybody know what it might be? Right, there. Well, this is a rare little survivor. Did you the bare area and the people sat in the back? Well, that's what this is from. The top is, of course, turned over so the water didn't come out, and it would just have a single bud. And that's what. Now that I've passed it all around, it's come back. This is one of a pair, and these are now $1,000 American a pair. Incredible price for a thing that went for nothing. But I always tell you the price after it's back. In case somebody goes, oh my goodness, he's right. Now, before I go on to your glassware that your members have bought in, does anybody have any questions? Did everybody hear the question? No. Are the items with the Australian motifs particularly expensive? The ones that are expensive, the two expensive ones to find, are the ones that contain the Kiwi and the EU. Of those two, the Kiwi's the harder one to find, right? There's a lot of talk that it was put out for the 1924-25 South Seas exhibition that was held in New Zealand, which is quite false. But of those two, the darker one of those two is worth more. So the darker colour of both of those is worth more than the marigold colour. The other one that's worth all the money is the large float bowl we talked about. The one I said that's a couple of $1,000, that is a large bowl of about 11.5 to 12 inches with a single kookaburra and 5 waratah flowers around the edge. They're worth a lot of money. Generally, bowls of this size, with the swan, the magpie, kingfisher, are worth $300 to $400. The others are now $1,000 plus. Okay?
The answer is yes.
The answer is yes, they're going up, but we can still find the kingfisher for under $200. But they are going up. And of course, no matter whatever price I mention, is that there's a criterion. The three is that it must be in good condition, the bowl, chips and so forth. It must have perfect moulding, and the most important thing is that the iridescence must be even. Okay? That's when you get the good prices. If the iridescence is patchy and the moulding's not good, it lowers the price. Thank you. Any other questions? Only one? Oh, that's good. That's good. Now, we'll move across to your pieces. And if I grab them and you've got a second one, could you let us know? And I'll start at the back because I think this is going to give me a surprise. Would I be able to have those lights lowered again, please? I think this might glow. I don't know, but I think it might. Yeah. See that? Now you see, we know that even though this is not carnival glass, it contains a certain amount of uranium oxide. Thank you very much. And what it means is that this particular item has been blown. Now, we'll go through that quick. Does it have a family history first?
No, it belonged to my mother-in-law, and it was just amongst her things.
Amongst her things, yes. Was it one of a pair?
No, it was a larger vase, but it had flowers painted on it.
Did it? Right. Okay. First of all, we tell you the process that it's blown into a mould. Now, how we know that is because at the top, it's been ground flat. Now, when these pieces came out of the mould, of course, they were quite rough on the top. So they're held on a stone, some form of stone in the factory. I'm not an expert on the factories. But it's held on a stone which grinds it at that flat edge. They have gold work applied, which this one has the remnants of gold work that's been there. A lot of them have little chips and nibbles around the edge, but in this process of grinding them, these edges were made weak, and they would chip. It has a finish on it. Now, a lot of the glassware that we see that has this painted finish is termed under that terminology of Mary Gregory glassware, when it has figures on it. This is technically not, although Mary Gregory covers a lot of fields. Why I asked if it was one of a pair is because the little gnome or whatever he is facing this way. There would have been another one that faced this way, and then they were meant for the mantelpiece or the sideboard or so forth, where you had one facing one another. He's a lovely little one. He's got a real lovely little face, and I've never seen the gnomes before. I've seen lots of ladies and children on swings and so forth, but never seen those before. It dates from just prior and into like from 1895 into about 1910, 1920. He's a lovely little item. It's a lovely little item. Thank you for bringing that. Now, see again, I'm doing the ones that aren't Carnival first. Now, whose is this one? I've got to remember. Now you had a family history, didn't you?
It was a present to my grandmother when she left the farm in 1926.
Right.
Her neighbour gave it to her, so farewell present.
Right, and I said to you, have you ever noticed the number on it? And you said no. Right, there you are. So you can have a piece and not really know it. Now inside this piece, it has a number here, which is known as a registration number. It's English pressed glassware because if I was to look at this, it has mould seams that go right up through the centre. It was produced in a two-part mould, meaning that the mould simply had a hinge with a pin. They took the pin, opened the mould and take the piece out. It's marked. If we were to look in a master book, we could find what day these were first registered for manufacture and perhaps find the company. It has a 6-digit number, and starting with a 170, I would estimate that it's probably around 1880, 1890 when it was first manufactured. But then, if it's a 6-digit number, it was manufactured up until 1905. But that was when it was first registered for manufacture. It's one of the English firms. It could be any of them. Sowerby, could be Greener, Davidson, any of those. We won't know unless we looked up the number. But a lovely piece, a beautiful piece. In those days, these were called sweetmeats, particularly with this lovely edge to it. That's gorgeous. Thank you very much. Now, the other piece, could I have the lights again, please? Sorry to do that to you. I reckon that this one will glow as well. Yeah. Now, you all can see that. So that contains, thank you very much, that contains uranium oxide as well. Now, this one is the ringing. That's English. This one here, I suspect, is probably European, maybe Czechoslovakia. This is made in Sydney at Crown Crystal. It was part of their series of fruit jugs they did. They did green, amber and flint glass, which was clear. This is the one that contains the pears and the cherries. They did apples and cherries, they did strawberries and they did grapes. They did the 1 pint jug, they did a large salad bowl and a small salad bowl in all the different patterns. It's from 1928, appears in the 1928 catalogue, and we have these in our collection at home. So whose was that? Yours. So there you are. So good old Australia. Now, we get to the Carnival. Whose was this one? That was yours. Has that got a family history?
Oh, and I associate with Grandma's great jam in Scotland.
Do you? Right. Okay. What we have is a piece of dark Australian Carnival glass. If I hold that to a strong light, it'd be a deep amethyst colour, and you can actually see it. It has a colour to it. It actually has this state's emblem, which is the piping stripe. There is a large bowl like this to match this as well, which comes in marigold and dark. One of 6 made in the 1920s at Crown Crystal in Sydney. Which was your other piece?
I think it's in the front and the middle.
That one?
That's the one, yes.
That one?
Yes.
Right. This is the same history?
No, I don't know.
Don't know that. Okay. This one is made in America When I said to you that Fenton produced glass from 1905 and they did about 10 to 12 patents to try out the American market, this is one of those 10 to 12 patents. It's simply known as acorn. It comes in a perfectly round bowl, low, shallow bowl, and then various crimping edges to it. Was from 1905 but was made right up until about 1918. It's called Acorn by Fenton, USA. Okay, that's that one. Now that was yours as well, wasn't it? Right, has that got a history?
Just a family area.
Right, okay, you would have seen that I produced this which glowed under the black light. That's exactly the same piece, except this piece will not glow because it doesn't have the uranium oxide. See, when you have a closer look to this, it has like a lemony, greeny edge to it. This one doesn't. It was made again by Fenton. Again, it was one of those first 10 to a dozen patents they made from 1905 in the USA. The patent is called Lotus and Grape. Lotus and Grape was made in this little three-legged bowl and then was made in a number of larger bowls as well. So that's that one. Your other one was the big one, wasn't it?
Yes.
This one. Now, this one was made by Northwood. It has a leg that we refer to as spatula-footed. The back pattern is called Meander. The inside pattern is simply called Sunflower because it's like a large sunflower. It's in green, and I don't generally go into the prices of what people have, but this particular one's damaged, which you knew, didn't you? Yes. If this was, yeah, because I didn't do it. If it was perfect, absolutely perfect, this would be $700 to $800 worth, only because of the colour. Okay, but not with the damage, of course, but only because of the colour that it's green. Absolute beauty, and made by Northwood. Now, Northwood came in after Fenton, and this is a piece from the period of 1910 to 1915. Okay. Now we have two more pieces. Oh. This one. Now, whose was this one? The lady came... Ah, here we are. Now, did you have a family history?
It belonged to my grandmother.
It belonged to your grandmother. Right. You said to me the horse's heads bowl, didn't you, when you came up? You see, it's known by two names, this one. Again, it's by Fenton. It's a piece that was done after 1910. That this was their period when they went into things that were a bit oriental. And the horse's heads, as it's known as, or horse medallions, was one of Fenton's famous ones. If it was in red, it'd be worth $10,500 American dollars. Because it's in marigold, not so. But it's one of their best pieces that they did. It's one of my favourites. It has these three lovely horses' heads set in like a medallion or a little circle there. It's a gorgeous little thing. Fenton again, USA, from that period, and in marigold.
And it would have been on sale in Adelaide, would it?
They would have come out to Adelaide, right, and then were on sale, yes. A lot of Fenton glassware sold in this state. And the last one we have, whose is this? That's yours, right. Now you asked me about this, didn't you, when we were talking before?
I wasn't sure whether it was Carnival Glass.
This is Carnival Glass, but this, you can tell there's a difference with the lustre and the iridescence from what we've spoken about tonight. This particular piece came from late 60s into the 70s and is considered what we call contemporary Carnival glass or modern Carnival. It's not reproduction because it's not from an old mould, right? It's from a totally new mould, and this contemporary Carnival was made in America and was made, we don't know. We haven't been able to find the company who made it. All we found is some of them had a little sticker that just said American made, and that was all it said. So that's what that one is, but definitely 60s, 70s. Okay, folks, I've gone over a little bit. I'm very sorry about that, but yes.
Was the glass hard wearing, or if you gather them not, would it chip or?
Yes. When I go through the talk, there's some things that I forget, and I'm glad you brought that one up because then I remember other things. But this glassware, number one, is that it can never take boiling hot water. It can only take lukewarm water, otherwise it'll shatter on you. If you knock a piece of it, it's hard to repair because you see and break a bit, because you've got to then try to reproduce the iridescence that's on it, and you can't do that. You can get away with it with the milk edge, but the standard marigold and the colours, you can't get away with it. It is a fairly hard-wearing glass. It's a thick, heavy glass, generally, but once it breaks, it's not easily repairable, no, to bring it back to what it was. Okay, folks, I've come to the end of the talk, and Margaret and I would like to thank you very much for having us tonight. We've enjoyed it. We hope we've been able to tell you something about the carnival we've had and the carnival you've had, and thank you very much for having us.